Hello, traders. It is Thursday, the 31st of May, 2018, last day of the month. Thanks for joining me for another Trader Bite where we review what we said is likely to happen, look at what actually happened, and then based on that, continue to look at the narrative and the context to create plans for what is likely to happen today. And basically, as it says in the tagline, preparation, anticipation, and then it all boils down to execution, right? So that's what we're here for. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. This morning, we have a mixed bag. Crude is down a dollar. Crude took a nice little dive overnight, taking back a lot of the parabolic move that happened yesterday that shot us up from about 66.75 or so to about 68.39. Pretty big move up. DAX is way down. DAX has been lagging. Well, let's see. Is the DAX even trading? Yeah, it is. DAX is way down, and the British pound is up. Euro stocks are up. Euro FX up. Japanese yen up. Russell up, and the bond is just slightly up. It's just a mishmash mess here. It looks like it's balancing today. Now that's what I expected yesterday. We'll go through what happened yesterday. Yesterday, very poor trading on my part. In that I just basically, despite indications, I took the short on the way up, and then reduced it based on what the market was saying, and then ended up stopping out. So. And then here we have the ES suddenly dropping. There's a lot of news chatter. I mean, the tweeter-in-chief is out in force this morning, talking about how the media is this and that. There's also a lot going on in terms of tariffs. The U.S. wants to slap tariffs on steel and other Eurozone products. There's just a lot going on. My news feed is just consistently shooting headlines across. We had some big numbers this morning. Initial claims came in. I won't go through those, but the initial claims, the PCE deflator came in, personal income came in, and also Canada's GDP came in. And there's also a little bit of news out of China. So just keep an ear out for news events. It's just that's basically what's driving what we're doing. Of course, the situation in Italy, which drove us down, is all of a sudden better as various key figures decide that Italy's President Mattarella said he'd be willing to wait for the League and Five Star Movement to make another attempt at forming a government. So that's big news. And part of what helped push us up yesterday. So here's where we are. Let's take a look at what we expected yesterday versus what we got. Yesterday, the expectation was we were opening in the upper distribution of the prior day, Tuesday, and I was looking for a test down into 26.97 and then eventually a drift up into 27.0950. This was the bullish scenario. And that's basically what worked out, but the market really pushed a lot farther than I expected. The secondary scenario is we open up, we push into 2709.50, then fail over, and then retest 26.92, and that did not happen. Here's what actually happened, and I'd like to take 4 minutes or however long it takes to walk through it. So this is where we were coming into the day. What you see here, just as an explanation, because this chart may look noisy to you, these numbers here, actually, let me change my pen color. Let's do something exciting today. There. Those numbers there, that's the bottom number is the size of the rotation in points. The top number is the delta, the total delta that went into that rotation. In other words, how much aggression went into that rotation. So those are those numbers. The gray bands that you see here, those are stock zones. Those are areas I'm looking to interact with the market. Those are the areas I'm looking to interact with the market in. And then the lines that you see here, IB high and low. This is prior high or low, and so on and so forth. The maroon line is the point of control. Just so you it might look noisy to you, but it's really not. These figures, these numbers on the sideline are what are called master levels. They're flex levels. Excuse me. And they're a bigger picture view of key areas that I'm monitoring based on the bigger picture, composite levels, things like that. This chart here is a delta bar chart. This shows basically, it looks like a price chart, but what it's doing is it's measuring how much aggression there is in terms of volume. And then the bottom chart, the bottom pane, is the rotations. We want to pay attention to rotations because that gives us a pretty good idea. It's kind of like in the hospital when they take your blood pressure or pulse. It's a bit of it gives us an indication of what's going on internally in the auction as price moves around. So we open at 2703. We open at 2703 right here. Okay. And as we walk forward, we see there's the opening swing high, 2707 quarter. I put a dashed cyan line on there. It breaks it, starts to move towards the opening swing low, and then starts to take off. In fact, the opening swing low should have been extended down here, except it happened so late. It happened at 9 o'clock. My time, which is a half hour after the open. And what we have is what looks like a completely sideways open auction right on the edge of the prior day's high. The prior day's high is a week high, as well, I don't know if I mentioned it publicly or not. It's a week high, and therefore we expect that to be taken out. And so I was looking for the short at the other end at 2714, and I started building a short down at 2714 all the way up to 2715, I believe, 2715 into the stock zone. Remember, the stock zones are where I engage with the market. They're not just kind of random areas. It rotated back enough, and it was consolidating long enough on a smaller time frame that I had to reduce the position by 2/3 to minimize the risk, but I wasn't going to mess with the trade. Remember, we don't get smart. People think they get smart after they put the trade on. You don't. And so I was looking for it to rotate back down into 2709, and it just could not. And that's where the stop took place. The next key area up was 2720. That is a combination of the highest volume node since the sell-off. Since the sell-off from February. It is also the 2718.50, which is the highest volume node or the point of control from May 10th to not the present. I should change that label. That stopped 2 days ago. That was a balancing area. And then it just continued higher. And what we have, if you notice, the thing I'd like you to walk away with is we have a 4.5 point rotation early up and a 4.25 down. So now we have a balanced market. But then we start to poke out 6.75 point rotation. And then down here we have 5 points. And next thing you know, we're pushing higher rotations, 10 points. Once we push this higher rotation, once this occurred, really the shorts should be off. And I did caution everyone at Convergent to who's short that this is a shot across the bow. If you're short, it's likely to continue. And then what you notice is the down rotations become very poor. Up rotation strong, down rotation poor. You see 3 bars, 2 bars. Up rotation strong, down rotation very small, very small. And as we push forward, as we forge ahead, you notice the down rotations are just awful, right? So there's very little to work with in terms of the short side. And that's why I watch rotations all the time. And then the only time we get a true down rotation is right there. Right there, as we settle out in the last hour, now we're getting sellers stepping in a little bit and giving us a real rotation. We got 8.25 points. 8.25 points. And so now we expect the market to balance out before the next leg is decided on. See how it's balancing out, up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's into the pit close. So the session is basically done. So that's how yesterday played out. Yesterday qualifies as a trend day. We had some balance on the open. That's the balance I was trading off of. Then we have multiple distributions throughout the day. Point of control in the upper quartile or upper 25% of the day. Upper 25% of the day with a weak high. And the ES continued to make weak highs throughout. Every time it put in a high, it traded a lot at that high. And it just kept putting in weak high, weak high, weak high, weak high. So that's a sign that we don't fade. So I faded this move here into the 14 area, which fills the gap. But then from that point on, I didn't do anything because there wasn't enough of a pullback. There was an opportunity right here. There wasn't enough of a pullback for me to get long. And when there was, like here, I didn't want to get long into a point of control, a composite point of control, which is likely to be turbulent. So I didn't participate in any of this up here. Overall, just not, as I've said publicly again and again and again, I know my strengths. But I also know my weaknesses, and my weaknesses are these trend days. And by the way, trend days used to be historically based on a sample size of 2,500 days. I forget how many of those qualified as trend, but it was more than 200, so it's a high confidence statistic. The incidence of trend days in ES was somewhere around 17 to 19% of the data set of all days. And in recent months, that has been pushing up towards 30%. It's really changed quite a bit recently. So if you cut the data set down to just 2 years and look at what percent of those years, in those 2 years, how many days out of the full 500-day sample in 2 years are trend days, it starts to inch up towards, I think, 28% or something like that. So the market's doing these trend days much more often. One of the quickest ways to gauge a trend day is, did we double the IB? This little dotted line I just turned on right here, that's double the IB. That's taking the IB and superimposing it twice. That's one of the first indications, kind of a rough indication of whether or not we're getting into a trend mode. So that's just interesting to note, something you want to keep an eye on. These trends tend to break out and just run. Here's our overnight session. So we close near highs, right? We closed yesterday's session near highs. We have a thin kind of a flagpole and a small base down below. We have a bona fide, or for some of you, bona fide trend day. And what we've done is we reopen right where we close. We gap down a little bit, and then we are just completely sideways. The overnight session compared to yesterday's range obviously looks very dwarfed, but the participation is pretty good. 170,000, greater than 110 to 125,000 common in the Globex session or the extended hours, and we have about 13 points of range, and a lot of that just got extended just now. But overall, fairly quiet session in the overnight throughout the evening. A quick look at the DAX. As someone had pointed out, while the ES is climbing and is back to Friday's range and so on, here's the DAX. The DAX, which represents the German market. A big part of a big component in Europe. The DAX is just completely sideways these last few days. As everything else is kind of sloshing around, the DAX is like, I don't know. So what we've done is we've been trading Tuesday's range now for 2 days. The DAX is in a strong consolidation. The DAX has the kind of setup where we would put an MC on it. Like that, we can see it's a normally distributed micro composite. The DAX is winding up for a big move. Caution on the DAX breaking out over the next couple of sessions. A quick reminder to everybody that the treasuries have rolled to September. So the U.S. treasuries are now trading September starting today. So if you're trading that product, it's time to roll forward to September. It's the U contract, U8 or U18 contract. As far as today's plan, we just took a pretty decent spill in the ES. Let's change our pen. Magenta was exciting, but it's too exciting. We're starting right here. We've been trading at the point of control a good portion of the session. We're starting out a little bit lower. Market's floating around a little bit. We just had a move from 27.27 down to 27.15.50. That's about 12 points. The rotation up, the mid of this rotation is about 21.5, and that puts us somewhere around this low volume node, and still in the upper distribution really. But the fact that the market's opening in this thin profile section is interesting. So the expectation for today, I expect it's opening in range. I'm expecting, again, an open auction. I'm looking for a small attempt higher and then looking for it to rotate back down, targeting 27.0950 as the primary target. Now, there's a lot to work through here. Open auction, up, break down, consolidate, break down, consolidate, and eventually get to 27.0950 at least before we see a bounce today. I'm being modest with the range here, but my expectation is it's likely to start to do that thing where we push down, move up, and then work our way back, as we've seen quite commonly over the last few weeks. So that's the primary scenario. The primary scenario is looking for weakness on the way up, and I monitor that in the order flow. I monitor that in rotations. I monitor it in the volume scope or the footprint. And I'm looking for areas to lean against short as the primary scenario. The secondary scenario, if we do go sideways and have an impulse up, I'm going to sit on my hands to see how it responds in the 27.25 area. And if it pushes through, then the shorts are off. Well, that sounds pretty bad. And the expectation is a continuation of yesterday's Trend, the target being 27.3250 above. So scenario 2 is an if else type of if then else type of scenario, and if it is unable to hold on, then you have scenario 1. If not, then we have is a market that's likely to balance in between. Okay, so scenario 2 is the push higher. Scenario 3 is an open push back into the point of control and just consolidate until we break to continue scenario 2 or 1 going off. Okay? So that's scenario 3. It's I'm going to be very tentative. I'm going to trade like I'm scalping, but I won't be scalping. I need to focus on what the market is saying versus committing as I did to one side because a bunch of different pieces of the narrative or the context supported trading from the outside in, and I ended up selling and then not finding a place to get long after that. So just need to stay aware of the fact that I'm starting to impose my own ideas on the market. It's very easy to do that. Good luck today, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. And if you're in Convergent, I'll see you in the chat room. Take care.